The kitchen of downtown Flavor Bistro was buzzing during lunch rush when a frail homeless woman, wrapped in a torn coat, timidly walked in. She held her stomach and whispered to the manager, "Please, may I cook one dish in exchange for something to eat?" The cooks burst out laughing. Customers turned their heads. One waiter smirked, "Lady, this isn't a soup kitchen. What could you possibly cook?" But she didn't flinch. She just looked at the stove as if it were calling her name. Her name was Evelyn Carter, though nobody cared to ask. What the staff didn't know was that years ago she stood on the stage of the Best Chef Awards in Paris, holding the golden trophy in her trembling hands as the world applauded her culinary genius. Now, hidden beneath layers of dirt, hunger and shame, Evelyn still carried hands that once created dishes worth thousands of dollars a plate. And that night, those hands were about to silence every laugh in that restaurant.
I never thought my life would end up like this. The truth is, hunger makes you do things you never imagined. That afternoon, I hadn't eaten in almost 3 days. My hands were shaking, not just from weakness, but from the shame of walking past cafes and bakeries where the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee mocked me. I was invisible to most people. To others, I was a nuisance. I had been living on the streets of Chicago for nearly a year. Every day blurred into the next. Park benches, cold nights under bridges, the constant fear of being pushed away like trash. I kept my head down, clutched my worn coat tighter, and told myself, "Just one more day, Evelyn. Just one more day." That's my name. Evelyn. Evelyn Carter. Once upon a time, it meant something. Now, it barely existed. That day, hunger became stronger than pride. I saw the bright sign of downtown Flavor Bistro, one of those trendy places where people waited in line just to post a picture of their food on Instagram. My stomach twisted when I caught the smell drifting out. Garlic, butter, something simmering slow. I stopped outside the glass doors, watching the waiters rush from table to table. For a moment, I thought, if I stand here long enough, maybe someone will notice me. Maybe they'll offer scraps. But no one did. So I pushed open the door. The noise of clinking cutlery and chatter filled my ears. Heads turned. I knew what they saw. A homeless woman, hair tangled, coat stained, shoes worn down to holes. A manager walked over, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but this is a private establishment." My voice came out low, trembling. "Please, I'm not asking for money. I can cook. Could I prepare just one dish in exchange for something to eat?" The restaurant erupted in laughter. Waiters covered their mouths. Some customers smirked. One cook leaned over the counter and shouted, "Lady, this isn't a soup kitchen. You think you can step in here and cook like a pro?" I lowered my eyes. "I only ask for a chance." "All right," the manager scoffed. "One dish. If it's bad, you're out. No food, no nothing. Clear?" I nodded. My hands, cold from the winter air, suddenly felt warm again. I stepped into the kitchen, ignoring the whispers, the mocking chuckles. I picked up a knife. For a moment, the world disappeared. The blade felt like an extension of my hand, like an old friend. My rhythm returned naturally. Chop, chop, chop. The onion split perfectly, herbs finely sliced with precision. The cooks who had been laughing leaned in closer. Their laughter faded into silence. The dish came together almost as if it had been waiting inside me all along. A wild mushroom risotto. The kind of dish that breathes life into a starving soul. Creamy, earthy, finished with fresh herbs I had gathered from a park nearby. The manager took the first bite. His eyes widened. He said nothing at first. Then, in a whisper, meant only for himself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. This is impossible." And in that moment, I wasn't invisible anymore. The manager didn't speak for a full 10 seconds, just stared at the spoon like it had told him a secret. Then he took another bite, and another. He swallowed, wiped the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand, and looked at me differently. "Who taught you to cook like this?" he asked. "Life," I said. "May I have a plate?" He nodded to a server. They handed me a small bowl, smaller than I'd dreamed of, but large enough to quiet the shaking inside me. I ate standing by the steel counter, one measured bite at a time, letting the warmth spread through my hands and face and chest, like a light turning back on in a house that had been dark for months. The kitchen noise changed. The last of the snickering died. A line cook asked if I wanted water. Another slid a clean towel toward me. I ate until it felt rude to keep going and set down my spoon. "Could I help with prep?" I asked. "If you have more onions, I can—" A laugh cracked like ice behind me. Not cruel this time. Nervous. The manager ran a hand through his hair and glanced at the dining room. "We're slammed," he said. "If you can handle the veg station, it'd be appreciated." He didn't say paid. I didn't ask. He pointed me to a stack of peppers, a case of greens that looked tired from the morning rush, a cutting board that had seen better days. I washed my hands until they stung, tied a borrowed apron around a coat that should have been thrown out last winter, and stepped to the board like stepping back into a life I'd left mid-sentence. The knife became a metronome. The kitchen's panic softened, tempos aligned. My mind did what it always did when the world turned to heat and steam and timing. It found a rhythm for every station. I started calling things, not as a boss, but as a person who could hear the food. 2 minutes on that salmon. Taste your vinaigrette. It's shy on acid. Pasta table. Save the pasta water. You'll need it to loosen the sauce. A few side eyes at first, then nods. I don't know when the camera arrived. Maybe the moment everything straightened. Maybe when the risotto fragrance drifted past the pass and into the dining room. All I know is I turned to salt the greens and found a kid with a phone at the edge of the kitchen doorway, filming. "Hey," he said, breathless, grinning. "I run a little food channel, Chi Bites. You're like unreal. What's your name?" "Evelyn," I said, too tired to invent anyone else. "You mind if I—" He lifted the phone slightly. "Mind? No." I gave a small shrug. What could a camera take from me I hadn't already lost? He stayed for 1 dish, then 2, then the rest of the lunch rush. Sometimes I forgot he was there. Sometimes I remembered and set a plate just a little cleaner, wiped a rim just a little brighter, because there is a kindness in sending food into the world, looking the way you wish you felt, put together, intentional, worthy of being seen. When the rush finally loosened its grip, I untied the apron. "Thank you," I told the manager, "for the chance." He cleared his throat. "That risotto, where'd you learn that?" I looked at my hands. A long time ago. "Come back tomorrow," he said. I can't put you on payroll without paperwork, but you can eat. And if you show me that risotto again, maybe we figure something out." I nodded, surprised by the sting at the back of my eyes. He offered a to-go box, extra bread tucked into the corner like an apology, and I left into the brittle afternoon. The wind off the river bit through my coat. I hugged the food close and tried not to think about how much a human body can adjust to, how quickly heat becomes memory. That night, I found a spot behind the church with the cracked steeple where the wind didn't cut as hard. I ate half the food and saved the rest for morning. I thought about the line cook who asked if I needed gloves. I thought about the thin-lipped woman at table 11 who watched me with her hand over her pearls like I might steal the air from her lungs. I thought about the phone pointed at me and whether it might still hold me in its glass eye tomorrow, or if I'd be erased when the kid found a better story. In the morning, the city was gray and wet, sidewalks glossed with last night's rain. I warmed my hands around a styrofoam cup of church coffee, promised myself I wouldn't go back to the bistro, and then walked there anyway. Hunger isn't the only thing that drives a person. Sometimes it's the ache to be useful to someone again, even a room full of strangers. I'd barely reached the corner when I noticed the line. It bent around the block like a ribbon. People with caps pulled low, kids in puffy jackets, a couple in matching running shoes. a woman in scrubs rubbing sleep from her eyes. The door opened, shut, opened again. A server stepped out to post a paper sign on the window. Limited menu today. Homeless chef's risotto while supplies last. No one laughed at the phrase. People were smiling, but not a mean kind. Inside, the manager's eyes were wild. "You came back," he said. "Thank God." "What happened?" He held up his phone. A video, shaky and bright with kitchen heat, played on loop. Me, the risotto, my hands, the kid's voice excited and tender. She asked to cook for food. "Watch this. I've eaten in Michelin places. And this blew me away." A caption in block letters. "We don't know her story. But we know talent when we taste it." 2 million views overnight, the manager said. "We have people asking for you by name. Evelyn, is that your name?" "It is," I said, throat tight. He tried to pay me in cash. I shook my head. "Just a plate," I said, "and I'll work." He argued. I refused. He compromised. "Food today, shoes tomorrow." "They're from my sister's store," he said. "Before you say no." I said yes, because his relief looked almost like gratitude, and because new souls sounded like heaven. The kitchen felt like a heart learning its own beat. I stepped in, nodded at the faces that had mocked me yesterday, and now found reasons to meet my eyes. "Let's prep the mushrooms first," I said. "Start a stock. If the risotto line is at full tilt, we'll need the good stuff." "Good stuff?" the line cook asked. "Bones," I said. "Aromatics. Thyme." I slid a pot onto the back burner. Flavor you earn. The day stretched long and warm. We sold out of risotto by 2. The vlogger returned with better lighting and a shaky apology for calling me homeless chef, as if that were my entire name. He filmed me showing a young cook how to finish the rice off heat so the grains surrendered without collapsing. He tried to ask about my past. I told him to ask the risotto instead. He laughed, but there was a question in his eyes that didn't go away. The thing about a video is that it doesn't ask permission to keep going. It moves without you. It gets seen by friends of friends who once spent a semester abroad in Paris and swear they recognize the way you hold a pan when you sauce. It lands in the feed of a food editor who remembers a certain plating style, clean, geometric, citrus microplane over a dark plate like first snow. It finds a former regular in a city far from here who once proposed to his boyfriend over your roasted figs and thyme cream. That night, while the bistro wiped down counters and rolled silverware, the manager's phone began to buzz like a trapped bee. DMs, emails, a journalist. Could we confirm the homeless chef's identity? A PR person. If this is who we think it is, we'd like to talk sponsorship. A chef from a hotel 2 neighborhoods over? We have a position. You could sleep in the staff dorms until you're settled. Please. When the manager showed me, the edges of my vision went dark. It should have felt like salvation. It felt like exposure. I'd built a life out of shadows, thin, cold, but mine. The idea of light touching everything made me want to run. "I can answer for you," he said gently. "We can say you're private, that you're not available." I swallowed. "I'm available to cook," I said. "I'm not available for questions." He nodded. "Then we'll give them food." For a few days that worked. People came because they were hungry for risotto and for a story that made them feel like the world could still surprise them in a good way. They left with full stomachs and a sentence they struggled to say right: Arborio, Carnaroli, Evelyn, not Eveline. The vlogger came back with a small tripod and a soft voice. He filmed my hands and stopped filming my face. "People connect with your skill," he said, "not the pain." But the internet is a bloodhound with a song it can't forget. A woman messaged the bistro late one night, a link attached. The Best Chef Awards, 2010. Paris. A stage lit like a promise. A woman with hair pinned back, a black jacket that fit like it had been made for her, because it had. She held a trophy and raised her hand to wave in a way I recognized, because it was mine. The fingers curled at the last second, shy, like applause was a thing you could sip. Evelyn Carter, the caption said, rising star, the palette of a poet, the precision of a surgeon. I stared at the photo until it blurred. I remembered the weight of that trophy, heavier than it looked, colder. I remembered the dinner after, clinking glasses and a voice in my ear that said, "We did it, Evie." The voice that would be gone before spring, along with the tiny heartbeat we'd told no one about yet. A car. A phone light. A moment that broke everything into pieces, small enough to swallow without chewing. The next morning, there were journalists outside. The manager tried to hold the door with his body. "She isn't taking questions," he said. "Is she here?" someone asked, eyes sharp. "Is it true does she?" I could have gone out the alley door and walked until my feet blistered, until the river decided if I belonged on this side of it or under. Instead, I went to the stove. "Onions," I said to the line cook. "Slow, no color, salt early, patience." He nodded, hands steady. The cameras pressed their lenses to the glass like impatient kids. People peered in, tapping, pointing. It would have been easy to hate them. I didn't. Curiosity saved me once, too. It got me through culinary school when I was the scholarship kid with 2 jobs and no time to waste. It got me across an ocean to stages where no one knew my name, and I learned to translate flavor in 4 languages. It got me back into a kitchen when I had nothing else left to offer but what my hands could do. The manager cut the music. The dining room fell into the hush of expectation. I ladled risotto like pouring quiet into bowls. The vlogger set his phone down and tied on an apron without a word. When the first bowl crossed the pass, the room exhaled. A woman in scrubs took a bite and covered her mouth with her palm. A construction worker closed his eyes like he'd walked into a warm house from a storm. A teenager took a photo and then put his phone away and ate like it mattered. Journalists don't like being told no, but sometimes a yes is hiding inside another door. After service, I stepped out, not to the microphones, but to the alley, where one reporter waited apart from the rest, her camera off, hands tucked into her jacket. "I'm not here to hound you," she said. "I lost my brother last year. He loved your Paris menu. If all you say is, 'I'm not ready,' I'll print that." I looked at the bricks, red and damp. "I'm not ready," I said. She nodded like that was the answer she'd expected. "Then I'll write about your risotto," she said, "and the line around the block, and the kid who said your food made him think differently about people." "Write about the team," I said. "They caught me when I was falling." She smiled. "Then I'll write about the net." That night, I didn't sleep behind the church. The manager's sister dropped off shoes that didn't leak at the seams and a coat that remembered warmth. The hotel chef sent word again about the staff dorms. "Just for a week," the manager said. "No conditions, just a door that locks." I said yes. In the quiet dorm room, I stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine a life with doors again. The video kept multiplying while I lay there, a mirror reflecting mirrors, each share finding someone else who needed it. Some wrote, "I'm bringing my mom tomorrow." Some wrote, "This made me cry in the grocery store, thanks a lot." One message said simply, "I'm 6 months sober. Your hands reminded me of my own." I pressed my palms together in the dark. I didn't pray, not exactly. I just listened to the thud of my pulse and counted. 1 for the girl in scrubs, 2 for the construction worker, 3 for the kid who ate before posting, 4 for the reporter who didn't force my name out of me, 5 for the manager who offered shoes instead of pity, 6 for the vlogger who learned when to put the camera down. Somewhere between 7 and 8, I finally slept. In the morning before the city woke, I dreamed of the stage in Paris again, of light and faces and a voice in my ear that I missed so much I thought it might break me. But in the dream, when I turned to step off the stage, the stairs led not to an empty street, but to a door marked kitchen. And when I opened it, the room smelled like onions going sweet without burning, and there was a pot of stock on a back burner, low and patient, and someone had written on the chalkboard, "Flavor you earn." I thought the story might fade in a week, like most viral videos do. People would move on to the next miracle, the next tragedy, the next distraction. But the line outside Downtown Flavor Bistro didn't shrink. It grew. By the second week, customers were arriving before sunrise, holding cups of coffee, wrapped in scarves, waiting just for the chance to taste my risotto. And that was the problem. It wasn't supposed to be mine. It was just food. Simple, honest food. Yet people spoke my name again, whispered it in excitement. Evelyn Carter. The name I had tried to bury under layers of silence, under months of cold nights and hunger. The staff looked at me differently now. The same cooks who once laughed had started asking me for advice, for recipes, for stories of Paris. I avoided answering. I told them, focus on the stock, respect the onions, trust your palate. But I never told them about the nights in Michelin-starred kitchens, or the glittering dining rooms filled with billionaires, or the taste of champagne the night I held that golden trophy. Because with those memories came others. The sirens, the twisted metal, the hospital hallway, the two lives gone in a blink. I couldn't tell one story without the other. One afternoon, as I was wiping down the counter after service, I noticed a man standing near the door. Tall, gray suit, silver tie clip. He wasn't holding a phone like the others, wasn't trying to snap a secret photo. He was just staring. The manager walked over to him. "Sorry, sir, we're closed until dinner service. If you'd like to join the line—" "I'm not here to eat," the man interrupted. His eyes never left me. Something in his face tugged at a memory. The jawline, the faint scar near his temple. And then it hit me. "Evelyn?" he said softly, almost reverently. The room stilled. The staff turned. My breath caught. "Do you remember me?" His voice was gentler than the world I lived in now. And suddenly, I did. His name rolled through my memory like a whisper from another lifetime. Thomas Green. A food journalist. One of the first to write about me when I opened my restaurant in New York. He'd called me the woman who could turn grief into flavor, silence into symphony. Back then, I'd thought it was just flowery writing. Now I knew he had seen something I hadn't been able to. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My own voice sounded foreign. "I saw the video," he said. "At first I couldn't believe it, but the way you moved, the way you tasted before seasoning, Evelyn, I knew. I had to see for myself." The cooks exchanged glances. The manager frowned. I wanted to run, to hide, but my feet stayed planted. "You shouldn't have come," I whispered. He stepped closer, but not too close. "You don't owe me anything, but the world, Evelyn, the world thought you vanished. People still ask about you. They still remember your dishes. Do you know what they called you?" I shook my head. The ghost chef. The one who walked away from glory and never looked back. And now here you are, cooking again. Don't you see what this means? I did see. That was the problem. The staff was listening. Customers pressed their faces against the glass, sensing drama. I felt the old panic rise in my chest. "I cook for food," I said firmly. "That's all. Nothing more." He smiled sadly. "Maybe that's true. But maybe it's also the beginning of something else." Then he left a card on the counter and walked away before I could tear it up. That night in the dorm, I stared at the card. Food and Life magazine, senior editor, a phone number, a name I used to trust. My fingers trembled over it, wanting to burn it, wanting to call it, wanting to do both. Instead, I shoved it under the thin mattress and curled into myself, telling the ceiling, "Don't you dare hope again, Evelyn. Don't you dare." But hope is like yeast. Even the smallest pinch, left alone in the dark, starts to rise. The next day, the line outside the restaurant was twice as long. But this time, they weren't just there for risotto. They were holding old cookbooks, yellowed magazine clippings, even faded posters from food festivals. My face, my younger face, smiled back at me from 100 pairs of hands. "Is it really you?" a woman asked, eyes wet. "I ate at your restaurant the night my husband proposed. That dish, you called it autumn on a plate. I've never forgotten it." I wanted to disappear. Instead, I nodded. Her joy hurt and healed me at the same time. By evening, my name was everywhere. Online headlines screamed, from the Best Chef Awards to the streets, the stunning fall and rise of Evelyn Carter. I had been found, and there was no going back to the shadows. The headlines spread faster than fire in a dry field. Everywhere I turned, my name was waiting for me. Evelyn Carter, the fallen star, the comeback nobody expected. The first time someone recognized me on the street, I nearly bolted into traffic. I had been carrying a bag of groceries, donations from a church pantry, when a young couple stopped me. "Are you?" the woman asked, her phone half raised, like she wasn't sure if she should take a picture. I froze. "You're her, aren't you? The chef from the video," she blurted, eyes shining. "We loved your restaurant back in New York. We thought you... Well, we didn't know what happened. Can we get a selfie?" I muttered something, anything, and stumbled away before the camera could catch me. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. The bag tore, cans clattering across the sidewalk. I left them there. Back at the bistro, the manager looked as rattled as I felt. He held up his phone, showing me the comments under the viral video. "People are demanding more content," he said. "They want recipes, interviews, collabs. There's even talk of TV shows." "I don't want that," I said flatly. "But Evelyn, this could change everything. For you, for this place, for all of us." I looked at the kitchen, the line cooks who now treated me with something like reverence. I wanted to help them. But the thought of cameras, lights, applause, it made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. "No cameras," I said. "No interviews. Just food." He sighed. "At least let us put your name on the specials board. People want to know it's you cooking." My throat clenched, but I nodded. If it makes the team safer, stronger, I can give them my name. That night, as I was packing up, Thomas Green returned, the journalist who had known me before the fall. "You've created a storm, Evelyn," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "the kind you can't outrun, but maybe you can steer it." "I don't want to steer anything," I snapped. "I want to cook, that's it." He tilted his head. "Cooking is never just cooking for you. It never was. You turned grief into flavor before, and now you're turning survival into hope. People taste that. That's why they can't get enough." His words cut too close. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing, except to see you claim what's already yours." He slid a magazine across the counter, Food and Life, the cover bold. "The Ghost Chef Returns." My picture from Paris, all youth and fire, stared back at me. I shoved it away. I am not that woman anymore. "No," he agreed softly. "You're stronger. But you have to decide if the world gets to see it." Days blurred into weeks. The line never stopped. My risotto became legend, but with every plate I served, the pressure grew. Whispers started. Could she still cook at the highest level? Or was she just a one-dish wonder? Investors called. Old colleagues sent messages, some kind, some cruel. "We thought you were dead. We thought you lost it. We thought you'd never touch a knife again." And then the invitation arrived. A letter, heavy paper, embossed seal, the Best Chef Awards, annual gala, invitation to return as guest of honor. I nearly tore it in half. But part of me, part I thought was buried, ached to walk on that stage again, to show them I wasn't just a ghost haunting kitchens, to show myself. Still, fear gnawed at me. What if I failed? What if I froze? What if they laughed the way the bistro staff had on that first day? I sat with the letter for hours. Finally, I folded it back into its envelope and shoved it into my coat pocket. The next morning, The bistro was chaos. A TV crew had shown up uninvited, cameras rolling, shouting my name. The manager tried to block them, but they shoved past him, shoving microphones in my face. "Evelyn, why did you disappear? Is it true you lost everything to addiction? Will you compete again? Are you still worthy of the title Best Chef?" The questions stabbed like knives. I froze, back against the wall, until I heard a voice cut through the noise. "Leave her alone!" It was the young vlogger, the kid who had filmed me the first time. He stood between me and the cameras, arms spread. "She's not your circus act. She's a person. Show some respect." For a moment, silence. Then the reporters backed off, muttering, packing up their gear. I sank onto a crate, trembling. The kid knelt beside me. "You don't owe them your story," he said quietly. "But if you ever want to tell it, I'll make sure it's told right." Tears blurred my vision. I hadn't cried like that in years. That night, alone in the dorm, I pulled the invitation from my pocket. My hands shook as I read it again. Guest of honor. A chance to step into the light, not for applause, not for fame, but maybe for closure. I whispered to the empty room, "Can I do this?" The silence didn't answer. But deep inside, under the scars and the hunger and the fear, a voice I hadn't heard in years stirred. It said, "Yes, you can." The envelope never left my pocket. I carried it with me like a stone, heavy, dragging my shoulders down with every step. Even when I chopped onions, stirred stock, plated risotto, I could feel it pressing against my side like a reminder. You've been called back to the stage you abandoned. At night, in the staff dorm, I'd pull it out and run my fingers across the embossed seal. Guest of honor, Best Chef Awards. My name printed in glossy black ink, daring me to believe I was still worthy of it. But every time I thought about saying yes, the memories came rushing in, the smell of gasoline and burning rubber, the sound of glass shattering, the last time I ever heard my husband's laugh, the last flutter of my unborn child's heartbeat on an ultrasound. Cooking had been my way of drowning the grief, until the grief drowned me instead. How could I stand under those lights again without breaking? One afternoon, the bistro was packed as usual. A group of college students waited at a corner table, whispering excitedly, pointing at the kitchen door. I tried to ignore them, but then one of them stood and approached. "Chef Carter?" he asked timidly. The word chef jolted me. It had been years since anyone had spoken it with respect. "Yes?" I said cautiously. He held out a notebook. I'm studying culinary arts. We watched your Paris acceptance speech in class. They told us you vanished, that you gave it all up. But seeing you here, it gives me hope." I stared at the notebook, his pen hovering like he wanted an autograph. My throat tightened. I wasn't ready to be anyone's hero, but I couldn't crush the hope in his eyes, so I signed my name, messy, shaky, but mine. When he walked away, I heard him whisper to his friends, "She's still got it. She's still real." For the rest of the shift, my hands didn't tremble. That evening, as I slipped out the back alley to avoid reporters, I found Thomas Green waiting. "You're still carrying it, aren't you?" he asked, nodding toward my pocket. I didn't answer. "The awards aren't about glory anymore," he said. "Not for you. They're about reclaiming your voice. Evelyn, if you walk away again, you'll never forgive yourself," I snapped, sharper than I meant. "And if I go back? What if I collapse in front of them? What if I can't plate a single dish? What if all they see is a broken woman who used to matter?" He stepped closer, voice firm but gentle. "Then let them see. Let them see the broken pieces, and how you still create beauty with them. That's what cooking is, isn't it? Turning scraps into something worth savoring." His words cut deep because they were true. That night, I returned to the dorm and dug through the small stash of food I'd saved. Not much, just rice, butter, onions, a few herbs. I set up a tiny burner and began to cook. Each movement felt like a rehearsal, not for the dish itself, but for the woman I'd need to become again. I stirred the rice, listening to it crackle, adding broth one ladle at a time. My hands remembered the rhythm, even when my heart faltered. I whispered to the empty room, "For you, for my husband, for my child, for every hungry mouth I'd fed at the bistro, for the girl who asked me to sign her notebook." The risotto finished creamy and perfect. I ate it slowly, tears slipping down my cheeks, tasting not just food, but fragments of the life I thought I'd buried. The next morning, I walked into the bistro and placed the invitation on the manager's desk. "I'm going," I said simply. He blinked. "You mean you'll stand on that stage again?" "Yes, but not alone. If I go, it's not for trophies. It's for everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, for this place, for second chances." His eyes softened. "Then we'll stand with you." Word spread quickly. The staff rallied around me, vowing to help me prepare. Even the young vlogger offered to shut off his camera and just be a line cook if that's what I needed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost haunting kitchens. I felt like part of a family again. Of course, the world wouldn't let me return quietly. The news exploded. Evelyn Carter accepts invitation to the Best Chef Awards after decade of silence. From homeless to headline, can Carter still deliver? A redemption story or a public breakdown in the making? The pressure was unbearable. Strangers debated my worth like I was an entry on a menu. Some cheered me on. Others sneered that I was a fraud who would crumble under the lights. But as the day drew near, I realized something. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I needed to prove it to myself. The night before the gala, I stood outside the bistro, watching the city lights shimmer on the river. I clutched the card Thomas had left me weeks ago. For the first time, I didn't feel fear when I looked at my reflection in the glass. I whispered, "Tomorrow, I stop running." And for the first time in years, I almost believed it. The limousine felt like another world. I hadn't sat in a car this polished in years. The leather smelled rich, the kind of scent that used to be so normal to me and now pressed against my senses like a dream I couldn't quite trust. Outside, the Chicago streets blurred past in streaks of light, cameras flashing from sidewalks where crowds had gathered just to catch a glimpse. The manager sat across from me, nervously tugging at his tie. The young vlogger, my unexpected protector, fiddled with his phone but didn't record. He just smiled at me from time to time, silently reminding me I wasn't walking into this alone. The invitation in my lap felt heavier than gold. The Best Chef Awards, Guest of Honor, Evelyn Carter. The embossed letters gleamed under the limo lights. "Are you ready?" the manager asked. "No," I admitted. My hands trembled in my lap. "But I'm going anyway." The gala hall was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers rained light across a sea of tuxedos and gowns, white tablecloths, glistening silverware, glasses filled with champagne. A live string quartet played softly in the background. I froze in the doorway. It was all so familiar, too familiar. For a heartbeat, I was back in Paris, climbing those stairs, trophy in hand, my husband's laughter waiting for me in the audience. The memory struck so hard, I almost staggered. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder. The vlogger, eyes steady, giving me that silent message again. "You can do this." I straightened. The host's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we welcome back a legend, a woman whose name once defined the future of cuisine. After years away, she returns to us, not as a ghost, but as proof of resilience, of survival, and of the transformative power of food. Please welcome Chef Evelyn Carter." The applause roared like thunder. I stepped into the light. It wasn't just a speech they wanted. They wanted proof. A dish. A gleaming kitchen had been set on stage, cameras poised to catch every movement. My challenge, to create something in under an hour that captured who I was now, not who I used to be. My hands hovered over the ingredients laid out before me. Rice, butter, onions, mushrooms, herbs. A familiar comfort. My risotto. The dish that had carried me from the streets back into kitchens. But then I saw more. Figs, thyme, dark chocolate, citrus, the ghosts of dishes I used to be known for, dishes tied to my husband, my child, my lost life. I swallowed hard. The clock began. I chopped the onions, slow at first, then steady, precise. The crowd hushed, mesmerized. I stirred the rice, adding stock one ladle at a time. My heartbeat found rhythm in the movement. But I knew risotto alone wasn't enough. Tonight wasn't about survival. It was about rebirth. I reached for the figs, roasted them gently, drizzled them with thyme cream, shaved dark chocolate over citrus zest. The flavors of my past blended with the dish of my present. Grief and hope, loss and survival, silence and song. When the final seconds ticked down, I plated with trembling hands. Risotto at the center, figs and cream circling it like orbiting planets. A dish that told my story without a single word. The judges approached. Chefs I once admired, once competed against, once dined beside. Their faces unreadable as they lifted spoons. One tasted the risotto, eyes widening just slightly. Another lingered over the figs, her lips parting in surprise. The third closed his eyes, chewing slowly, almost reverently. Finally, the head judge set down his spoon. His voice carried through the hall. This is not the work of the woman we crowned 10 years ago. This is something else, something deeper. A dish born not just from skill, but from scars. Chef Carter, tonight you did not reclaim your past, you created a future. The room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, shouting my name. I stood frozen, tears threatening to spill. For once, I didn't shrink from the sound. I let it wash over me. But even in that moment of triumph, the ghosts came. I saw my husband in the crowd, smiling, clapping, his hand resting on the swell of my pregnant belly. I heard the laughter of a child that never came into the world. The tears fell freely now. I didn't wipe them away. Instead, I whispered to the stage, to the lights, to the people watching across the world. This dish was for them, for the family I lost, for the life I thought ended, and for every soul who has ever been broken and told they could not rise again. Tonight is proof. We can. The hall went silent, then roared again, louder than before. And for the first time in a decade, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt alive. That night, the cameras captured not just a chef returning, but a woman reclaiming her voice. And while the world debated trophies, titles, and rankings, I knew the truth. I hadn't come to win. I had come to heal. The ride back from the gala was quiet. The manager kept glancing at me like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. The young vlogger sat across from me, smiling faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't need sound. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt whole. When I stepped out of the car, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust toward my face, questions flying. I didn't run this time. I didn't shrink. I just lifted my hand, shook my head gently, and walked past them. I had already said what mattered on that stage. Everything else was noise. The next morning, the world was ablaze. Headlines screamed about my return. Videos of the dish circulated everywhere, millions of views piling up within hours. Some called it the comeback of the decade. Others dissected the plating, the flavors, trying to find the secret. But no article, no analysis, no broadcast could capture what I had felt standing in that hall. The weight of ghosts lifted, even if just for a moment. At the bistro, the line outside was longer than ever. Customers held flowers, cards, even thank you notes. Some wanted pictures. Others just wanted to taste the food of the woman they had seen cry on stage and admit her pain to the world. When I walked into the kitchen, the staff clapped and whistled, their faces bright with pride. The vlogger grinned and said, "You broke the internet, chef." I smiled, but inside I felt a tug. Fame was a flood, and floods don't care who they drown. I knew this wave wouldn't last forever, and part of me didn't want it to. I hadn't fought to return to the spotlight. I had fought to return to myself. That night, I sat in the dorm, the invitation now folded neatly in my drawer, the trophy from Paris long gone, but the taste of victory lingering on my tongue. I thought about what to do with this second chance. Open a restaurant again? Sign contracts, chase stars, build empires? The thought exhausted me. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life proving myself to strangers. What I wanted was simpler. I thought of the kid in culinary school who asked for my autograph, of the woman in scrubs who cried into her first bite of risotto, of the people in line every morning, shivering, waiting not just for food, but for something that made them feel human again. That was it. That was where my second chance lived. Not in chandeliers and trophies, but in kitchens filled with laughter, with students learning to turn scraps into hope, with strangers becoming family over a single shared meal. The next day, I called Thomas Green. When he answered, I said only 2 words: "Help me." He didn't hesitate. "What do you need?" "A place, not a restaurant, a school, a community kitchen. Somewhere people who've been forgotten can come, learn, eat, and belong." He was silent for a beat. Then, "I know the people who can make that happen." And so the idea was born. Not the rebirth of my old life, but the birth of something new. We called it Second Chance Kitchen. It wasn't about me. It was about everyone who had been told they were finished. Everyone who had been laughed at, rejected, discarded. In that kitchen they would discover, as I had, that broken doesn't mean worthless. When the doors finally opened months later, I stood in the entryway as volunteers served steaming plates to families, as young students nervously held their knives, as laughter filled the air where silence used to live. Cameras came, of course, reporters too. But this time I didn't mind, because the story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who stepped inside. And as I stirred a pot of risotto that first night, I whispered the same words I had whispered alone in that dorm room. For you. For the ones I lost. For the ones I found. For everyone who needed to believe that even the hungriest soul could rise again. And in that moment, I knew. I had not returned to the world of chefs. I had created a new one. A world where food wasn't about power, but about grace. Where flavor wasn't earned with trophies, but with scars healed and hearts fed. Where I was no longer a ghost. I was home. The smell of simmering stock filled the hall. Dozens of students moved around me, some carefully chopping vegetables, others nervously stirring pots, their hands unsure but eager. I walked among them slowly, correcting a grip here, adjusting seasoning there. Every correction was gentle. Every mistake was treated like an invitation to learn, not a reason to scold. In the far corner, a woman in a torn coat was washing dishes. She had slipped in off the street earlier, shy and trembling, asking only for a place to warm up. We gave her gloves, a meal, and a smile. When she caught my eye, she mouthed, "Thank you." I felt my chest tighten, because I knew exactly what it meant to stand where she stood. The laughter of children echoed through the space. Volunteers served plates at long communal tables where strangers became neighbors in the span of one meal. It was messy, loud, imperfect, yet it was everything I had once dreamed food could be. As I stirred the risotto, I realized it had become more than a dish. It was a thread, weaving me back into life. Every ladle of broth, every grain of rice was part of a story that began with hunger and humiliation and had somehow arrived here, in this warm room filled with hope. I leaned on the counter for a moment, closing my eyes. I saw my husband smile again, the one that used to light up a whole kitchen. I imagined the child we never got to raise, laughing in the crowd, running between the tables. For years, those memories had been chains pulling me under. Tonight, they were wings lifting me higher. I whispered into the steam, so softly no one else could hear. This is for you, all of it. When I opened my eyes, the room was brighter somehow, not because of the lights, but because of the faces, people who had come with nothing and left with full hearts. And I realized something. The awards, the fame, the applause, they had given me recognition. But this gave me purpose. Later that night, when the kitchen was quiet and the last pot was scrubbed clean, I sat at one of the long tables, listening to the silence. I thought about the girl I had been, the woman with the trophy, the woman who fell, the woman who rose again. And I knew, finally, that I didn't need to run from any of them. They were all me. I smiled into the stillness and spoke the words I had been too afraid to believe for so long. I am not finished. I am just beginning. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there who heard my story would believe the same about themselves.